Desperation made you brave in ways pride never could. Nathan Cross stood before the iron gates, staring up at the glass and steel mansion that crowned the hillside like a monument to wealth he'd never touch. His right pocket held a crumpled eviction notice, $2,400 in back rent, 14 days to vacate. His left held a list of names, 23 people who'd walked through those gates and fled within days. Some lasted hours. The woman inside had a gift for making people quit. The coordinator's voice still echoed in his head from yesterday's meeting. Miss Ashford is extremely challenging. She threw a lamp at number 17. The man lasted 3 hours. Number 21 got slapped for breathing too loud. 23 left his jacket on a chair and ran to his car without looking back. Most quit in 48 hours. The pay reflects the difficulty, $4,500 a month, nearly triple what you're making now. Nathan had done the math in the parking lot. Triple meant catching up on rent. New shoes for Sophie instead of cardboard inserts. Maybe even saving enough to fix the transmission, grinding itself to death in his 15-year-old sedan. He'd looked at the coordinator and watched her face change when he spoke. "I'll take it." She'd leaned forward, lowering her voice. "There's something else. The Oakland incident 2 years ago. The abuse allegation. It was dismissed, but the record exists. If Miss Ashford discovers it, she won't, unless someone tells her." The coordinator had studied him for a long moment before sliding the contract across her desk. "Don't make me regret this." Now he pushed through the gates, gravel crunching under shoes that needed replacing before winter. The mansion loomed larger with each step, all sharp angles and floor-to-ceiling windows that turned the building into an aquarium for the wealthy. Nothing about it felt like a home. Everything screamed showroom, carefully designed to impress rather than comfort. A housekeeper opened the door before he could knock. Her face carried the exhaustion of someone trapped in a job that ground them down daily. "Good luck. You'll need it." The words hung in the air as she led him through a foyer that could swallow his entire apartment. Marble floors caught the morning light, throwing it back in cold waves. The silence pressed against his ears, not peaceful quiet, but the oppressive absence of life, as if the house itself held its breath. Victoria Ashford sat in a motorized wheelchair by floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking gardens too perfect to be real. She didn't turn when Nathan entered. The housekeeper retreated without announcement, her footsteps fading into the mansion's hollow spaces. Nathan cleared his throat. "Miss Ashford, I'm Nathan Cross. The agency sent me. I know who you are." Victoria's voice could have cut glass. "They always send someone. You'll quit like the rest." The wheelchair rotated smoothly, mechanical precision in the movement. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe 37, dark hair pulled back so tight it seemed to stretch her face into permanent severity. Sharp cheekbones, lips pressed into a line that suggested smiling had become a foreign concept. Her legs disappeared beneath a blanket despite the warm house, hands resting on the wheelchair controls like a pilot ready to eject. "I don't plan to quit." They never do. Victoria's eyes tracked over him, assessing, finding him lacking. "The agency mentioned I'm difficult?" "They mentioned it. Difficult is polite corporate speak. The truth is I'm a nightmare. I throw things when people disappoint me. I make demands that are impossible to meet. I've fired assistants for breathing wrong." Nathan kept his expression neutral. "Then it's fortunate I know how to breathe properly." Something flickered across Victoria's face. Surprise, maybe, or anger at being challenged. "You think you're funny?" "No, I think I'm here to do a job. Tell me what you need." The directness seemed to catch her off guard. She blinked, the armor cracking for half a heartbeat before slamming back into place. "Fine. My medication. The bottles are in the bathroom. Bring me the blood pressure pills and pain medication." Nathan found the bathroom through an adjoining door, pristine white tile and chrome fixtures that had probably never seen a water spot. The medicine cabinet held enough prescriptions to stock a pharmacy, dozens of orange bottles with names he recognized from previous caregiving positions. He gathered the 2 she'd requested and returned, holding them out in his right hand. Victoria stared at his outstretched hand without moving. "Wrong hand. What?" "I take pills with my left hand. You should have offered them to my left." Nathan switched hands without comment, extending the bottles toward her left side. Victoria knocked them to the floor with a sharp swing of her arm. The bottles bounced and rolled across the marble, pills scattering like dropped dice. Too late. You already made the mistake. Pick them up. Nathan crouched and gathered the bottles, collecting stray pills into his palm. When he straightened, Victoria watched him with an expression that mixed challenge and confusion. You're supposed to be angry now. Victoria leaned forward slightly. Supposed to tell me I'm being unreasonable and walk out. That's what the others do. I'm not angry. Why not? I just deliberately made you crawl on the floor for my amusement. Nathan placed the bottles on the side table within her reach. Because you want me to be angry. You want me to storm out so you can tell yourself you were right, another person who couldn't handle you. But I'm not playing that game. He pulled a chair closer and sat, putting himself at eye level with her. I'm going to be direct with you, Miss Ashford. I need this job. I have a 7-year-old daughter who needs shoes and food and stability, so I'm not quitting over medication bottles or attitude or any other test you want to throw at me. You want me gone? You'll have to fire me officially through the agency, but until then, I'm here to help whether you want help or not. Victoria stared at him, and for a moment the mansion's oppressive silence wrapped around them both. You have a daughter? Yes, Sophie. She's 7 years old. Where is she now? After school program until 5? Then I pick her up. I can return for evening duties if needed. The agency said hours are 8 to 6 with flexibility. Victoria's tone had shifted, less cutting but not exactly warm. You'll be leaving at 5 every day. I'll be here 8 to 5, pick up Sophie, and can return if you need evening assistance. We can work out a schedule. I don't like children. Good thing she won't be here then. They locked eyes across the space between them, some invisible negotiation happening in the silence. Victoria looked away first, a muscle in her jaw tightening. Your duties start with physical therapy. The equipment is in the gym downstairs. I hate every minute of it, and I'll probably make you hate it too. I can handle it. We'll see. The gym occupied what had probably been designed as a ballroom. High ceilings, mirrors covering one wall, equipment that looked medical grade and barely used. Parallel bars stood in the center like a challenge Victoria had been avoiding. A mat lay rolled in the corner, gathering dust. Dr. Chen's instructions are in the folder. Victoria wheeled herself to the parallel bars and stopped, staring at them with something close to hatred. 3 sets of resistance exercises, 20 minutes of stretching, core strengthening, all completely pointless. Nathan retrieved the folder and scanned the detailed routine. Why pointless? Because I'll never walk again. Victoria's voice had gone flat. So building core strength just means I can sit up straighter in this chair. Stretching prevents contractures in muscles that don't work. It's all maintenance for a body that's already broken. The therapist notes say you might regain some function with consistent work. Might, maybe, possibly. I've heard every variation. Meanwhile, I'm stuck like this. You're only stuck if you stop trying. Victoria laughed, bitter and sharp. Easy for you to say. Nathan began setting up the first exercise, positioning resistance bands according to the instructions. Actually, it's not easy for me to say, but we can discuss that later. Right now, let's do the work. The session proved exactly as unpleasant as promised. Victoria complained about every exercise, criticized Nathan's technique even though he followed the instructions precisely, and threw a resistance band across the room when he suggested she could push herself harder. Nathan picked up the band without comment and handed it back. You're doing it wrong. Show me the right way then. I can't. Victoria's voice cracked slightly. That's the whole point. I can't do anything right anymore. Then help me do it right for you. Tell me what needs adjusting. The request seemed to throw her off balance. She blinked, the permanent scowl softening into confusion before hardening again. The angle needs to be lower. You're pulling too high. Nathan adjusted. Like this? Better. They worked through the rest of the routine in tense silence, Victoria correcting his positioning with less venom, Nathan following her guidance without argument. By the end, sweat darkened her shirt and exhaustion lined her face. I'm tired. I want to rest. Let me help you to the bedroom. I can get there myself. I'm sure you can, but part of my job is assisting with transfers. Let me do my job. Nathan positioned the wheelchair beside the bed and followed the transfer protocol he'd learned in previous positions, supporting her weight, maintaining her dignity, moving with practiced efficiency. Victoria settled back against the pillows, looking smaller somehow, without the wheelchair's mechanical authority. You're not scared of me? No, why not? Because I've seen people at their worst. Grief, pain, fear, anger. You're not scary. You're just hurt. Don't psychoanalyze me. Not psychoanalyzing, just observing. Nathan adjusted the pillows and made sure the call button rested within her reach. I'll be in the kitchen preparing lunch. Call if you need anything. As he reached the door, Victoria's voice followed him, quieter now. You'll quit. They always do. I already told you I don't quit easy. The next 3 days established a brutal pattern. Victoria tested him constantly. Impossible demands delivered with casual cruelty, sudden mood swings designed to knock him off balance, deliberate difficulties that would have sent most people fleeing. She wanted breakfast at 7:03 in the morning, not 7:05. Water needed to be exactly 72 degrees. Medications had to be arranged alphabetically regardless of when she needed them. Nathan met every demand without complaint. He learned her actual needs versus the performance, started anticipating requirements before she voiced them, adapted his approach when something genuinely bothered her versus when she was simply testing his patience. His back ached from the physical demands, old injury from a previous position flaring up, but he hid the pain and kept working. On day 3, Victoria stopped throwing things. On day 4, she asked a question that wasn't a test. You're still here. I told you I would be. Most people are gone by now. I'm not most people. Day 5 brought a shift Nathan hadn't anticipated. His phone rang at 6:40 in the morning. Tom Rodriguez's voice tense on the other end. Nathan, Sophie's running a fever. School won't take her. Maria has a doctor's appointment. She can't watch her today. Nathan's chest tightened. I can't miss work. Not this week. I know, but there's no one else. You need to figure something out. He called Victoria, explaining the situation, hearing the awkwardness in his own voice as he asked permission to bring his daughter to work. She'll be quiet. She brought books and coloring supplies. I wouldn't ask if I had any other option. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that Nathan prepared for rejection. Finally, Victoria spoke. I told you I don't like children. I know, but this is an emergency. Another pause. Fine, but no noise. Sophie sat pale and subdued in the passenger seat as Nathan drove to the mansion, her forehead warm against his palm when he checked. Just a low fever, nothing serious, but enough to trigger school policy. She clutched her backpack full of books and art supplies, eyes wide as they passed through the iron gates. That's the castle? It's just a house, sweetheart, but so big, like in my books. Victoria waited in the main room, wheelchair positioned to face the door. Her expression carried all the warmth of a January storm. Sophie walked in without hesitation, no fear in her approach, despite Victoria's obvious displeasure. Hi, Miss Ashford. Daddy says you live in a castle. Do you have a dragon? It's not a castle. Victoria's voice came out sharper than Nathan had heard all week. And there's no dragon. That's sad. Sophie tilted her head, considering. Every castle should have a dragon. I can draw you one if you want. Despite everything, the tension, the impossible situation, the tightrope Nathan walked, something shifted in Victoria's expression. Not quite a smile, but a softening around the eyes. I suppose that would be acceptable. Sophie settled on the floor with her supplies while Nathan helped Victoria through morning exercises. She kept her promise, staying quiet and absorbed in her drawing, occasionally humming under her breath. After physical therapy, while Victoria rested, Sophie approached the wheelchair with her finished artwork. I made your dragon. She held up a colorful drawing showing a woman in a wheelchair beside a large, friendly-looking dragon. Her name is Ember. She helps the knight go on adventures. See? The knight can't walk, but Ember carries her to amazing places. Victoria stared at the picture long enough that Nathan started to worry. Finally, she spoke, voice rough. Why did you make the knight unable to walk? Because you can't walk, right? Sophie's matter-of-fact tone carried no pity, just simple observation. Daddy says everyone should see themselves in stories. So I made a knight like you, and the dragon helps because everyone needs help sometimes. That's what Daddy says. He says asking for help isn't weak. It's smart. Victoria looked at Nathan, who busied himself preparing lunch and definitely wasn't listening to every word. Your daddy says a lot of wise things. He's the smartest daddy in the world. Can I keep this drawing? Sophie's entire face lit up. Really? You want to keep it? If you don't mind, I don't have much art on these walls. I can make you more. Do you want a unicorn next? Or maybe a phoenix? The word left Victoria's lips before she could catch it. Surprise me. That afternoon passed differently than any since Nathan had started. Victoria asked questions about Sophie, what she liked, how she was doing in school, whether the fever was coming down. The little girl's presence seemed to drain some venom from the mansion's oppressive atmosphere, or maybe Victoria simply couldn't maintain her armor against someone so genuinely kind. She seems happy. Victoria observed this later, after Sophie had dozed off on the couch. Your daughter, she is, mostly. Nathan kept his voice low to avoid waking her. She misses her mom sometimes, has bad days, but kids are resilient, more resilient than adults apparently. I don't know about that. Nathan glanced at Victoria. I think adults just have more practice hiding when they're not okay. They sat in companionable silence, the first truly comfortable moment since Nathan had walked through the door 5 days ago. Sophie's soft breathing filled the space where Victoria's cutting remarks usually lived. By the time Nathan needed to leave, Victoria had retreated behind her walls again. But not as high, not as sharp. You lasted the week. I'll be here Monday too. Why? Why stay when I've been awful to you? Because you need help. And because I'm starting to think you're not quite as impossible as you want people to believe. Victoria's lips twitched, not quite a smile, but something adjacent. Don't tell anyone. I have a reputation to maintain. Your secret's safe with me. Driving home with Sophie asleep in the passenger seat, Nathan felt something unfamiliar working its way through his chest. Not just relief at keeping the though that mattered enormously. Something more like purpose. Victoria Ashford was difficult, angry, pushing everyone away. But underneath, Nathan recognized the pattern. Someone scared of being abandoned again. Someone testing people to see if they'd stay. Someone who needed to know they weren't alone. He understood completely because 4 years ago, he'd been that person. Week 2 began with Sophie's dragon drawing taped to Victoria's wall, the only splash of color in the sterile white room. Victoria stared at it during their morning routine, something unreadable crossing her face. Your daughter has talent. She gets her optimism from her mother. Nathan helped Victoria with stretches, noting subtle improvements in her flexibility. Claire always saw possibilities where I saw obstacles. Claire was your wife? Was. Nathan's hand stilled for a moment. The grammar gets complicated when someone dies. Victoria didn't push, which Nathan appreciated. They worked through the exercises in silence until she finally spoke again. When did she pass? 4 years ago. Cancer. Fast and brutal. Left me with a 3-year-old and no idea how to be both parents at once. How did you cope? Nathan laughed without humor. Badly at first. Drank too much, withdrew from friends, barely functioned. Then one night, Sophie had a nightmare. I realized I was so lost in my own grief that I was failing to be there for her. That's when I decided I had to choose differently. Just like that. One moment of clarity and everything changed. Not everything, not immediately, but I started making different choices. Small ones at first, getting up when I wanted to stay in bed, eating even when I wasn't hungry, showing up for Sophie even when I felt empty. Eventually, those small choices added up to a different life. Victoria was quiet for so long, Nathan thought she'd finished the conversation. Then softly, what if I don't have anyone to show up for? You have yourself. That should be enough. The words seemed to hit Victoria hard. She turned her face away, but Nathan caught the shine of tears before she blinked them back. Later that week, during physical therapy, a photo fell from a shelf. Nathan picked it up automatically. Victoria on a mountain summit, arms raised in triumph, face alive with joy in a way the bitter woman before him never showed. That was 3 years ago. Victoria's voice had gone distant. Before the accident, I was free climbing in Colorado. Fell 50 feet. Lucky to be alive, they said. It didn't feel lucky. What happened? Equipment failure. My harness clip broke during a pitch. I should have checked it more carefully. Instead, I live with the consequences. Nathan studied the photo, seeing the person Victoria used to be. Fearless, powerful, whole. You miss it. The climbing. I miss everything. The movement, the freedom, the feeling of being capable. Now I can't even stand without help. The physical therapist's notes say you might regain some function with consistent work. Might, maybe, possibly. Victoria's jaw clenched. Meanwhile, I'm stuck like this. You're only stuck if you stop trying. The laugh that escaped Victoria carried more bitterness than Nathan had heard yet. Easy for you to say. Actually, it's not. Something in Nathan's tone made Victoria look up sharply. Their eyes met across the space between them, and Nathan made a decision. My wife died 4 years ago. I told you that. What I didn't tell you is that for 3 days after her funeral, I couldn't get out of bed, couldn't function, couldn't even take care of my daughter. Child services came to the house. I was that close to losing Sophie. Victoria's expression softened incrementally. What changed? On day 4, Sophie came into my room. She was 3 years old, climbed into bed with me, and said, "Daddy's sad, but Sophie loves you anyway." Just that simple acceptance that I was broken, but still loved. It gave me enough strength to get up, get help, start putting pieces back together. You had a reason to get up, your daughter, and you have reasons too. They just look different. Every day you do physical therapy, you're choosing to try. Every time you engage with me, instead of pushing me away, you're choosing connection. Those are brave choices. They don't feel brave. Courage never feels like courage when you're in the middle of it. Nathan repositioned the resistance band. It just feels like surviving one more day. Victoria didn't respond, but something in her posture shifted. She pushed herself harder through the remaining exercises, complaining less, trying more. When Nathan suggested they attempt standing at the parallel bars, something she'd refused since he started, she didn't immediately reject the idea. Let me think about it. That evening, Nathan found Victoria in the gym at 6 p.m., an hour past his usual departure time. She'd wheeled herself to the parallel bars and sat staring at them like they might bite. I want to try. Now, while I still have courage. Before I talk myself out of it. They positioned the wheelchair between the parallel bars, Nathan explaining the process. On 3, I'll help you stand. The bars will hold most of your weight. I'll support your torso. You ready? No, but let's do it anyway. 1, 2, 3, G. Victoria pushed with her arms while Nathan provided support. Her legs trembled violently, barely holding any weight. But for 5 seconds, 5 impossibly long trembling seconds, she stood. Then her legs gave out and she dropped back into the wheelchair, hard enough to jar Nathan's grip. Damn it. Victoria's hands shook on the armrests. 5 seconds. That's not standing. That's barely anything. It's 5 seconds more than you've managed in 2 years. Nathan crouched beside the wheelchair. That's incredible progress. It's not enough. It's enough for today. Tomorrow we try for 6 seconds, then 7. That's how progress works. 1 second at a time. Victoria's eyes were wet, frustration and something like hope warring in her expression. What if I can't do more? What if this is as good as it gets? Nathan met her gaze directly. Then this is as good as it gets, and you learn to build a life within those parameters. But Victoria, I don't think this is your limit. I think you're stronger than you believe. How can you know that? Because I've watched you for 2 weeks. I've seen you push through exercises that hurt. I've seen you try things you claimed were impossible. You're not weak. You're just scared. Victoria's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I'm terrified. Terrified of trying and failing, of hoping and being disappointed, of working this hard and still ending up stuck. I know, but fear doesn't protect you from disappointment. It just keeps you from possibility. They sat there in the gym's fluorescent lighting, Victoria processing his words, Nathan giving her space to feel everything she'd been holding back. Finally, she spoke. Tell me something. When Claire died, were you scared of moving forward? Absolutely. Scared of failing Sophie? Scared of making wrong choices? Scared of being alone forever? Still scared sometimes. But you did it anyway. I did it anyway. Because the alternative was staying paralyzed by fear. And that wasn't fair to Sophie or to me. Victoria looked at the parallel bars, then back at Nathan. I want to try again. You sure? We can wait until tomorrow. No. Now, while I still have courage. They tried again, and again, and again. By the 10th attempt, Victoria managed 8 seconds, her legs shaking badly, face red with effort, but standing. When she sank back into the wheelchair, tears streamed down her face. I did it. I actually stood. You did. And tomorrow you'll do it again. And the day after that. Victoria wiped at her eyes, not bothering to hide her emotions for the first time since Nathan had met her. Why do you believe in me when I don't believe in myself? Because someone has to. Might as well be me. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning neither was quite ready to examine. Nathan stood, stretching his back, the old injury making itself known after the intensity of the session. You're hurt, Victoria noticed immediately. Your back, old injury, flares up sometimes. I'm fine, you should have said something. We could have adjusted the routine. Nathan shook his head. This is my job. Taking care of you comes first. That's exactly the problem. Victoria's voice carried unexpected fierceness. You can't take care of anyone if you hurt yourself doing it. Tomorrow we modify the transfers. Show me the proper technique that doesn't strain your back. The concern in her voice caught Nathan off guard. All right. As Nathan prepared to leave, Victoria called out, Wait, he turned back. Tomorrow when you bring Sophie. Victoria hesitated, vulnerability flickering across her features. I liked having her energy around. The house is too quiet without it. She'd love to come. Fair warning though, she'll probably talk your ear off. I'm counting on it. This house has been too quiet for too long. Week 3 arrived with Sophie becoming a regular presence, her drawings accumulating on Victoria's walls like splashes of color against the mansion's sterile white. The little girl had no fear of Victoria's wheelchair or occasional sharp words, treating both as simple facts rather than barriers. She told elaborate stories about dragons and knights, asked endless questions about Victoria's climbing photos, and dragged both adults into her world with infectious enthusiasm. One afternoon, Sophie insisted Victoria help make dinner. You have hands. Hands can do lots of things. Come on. Before Victoria could protest, Sophie had pushed her wheelchair into the kitchen. Nathan adjusted the stove setup so Victoria could reach safely, handed her a wooden spoon, and watched something remarkable happen. Victoria stirred sauce, added seasoning Sophie handed her, tasted and adjusted salt, all with an expression somewhere between wonder and grief. I haven't cooked in 2 years. She stared at the spoon in her hand. I assumed I couldn't. Lots of things are possible with adaptation. Nathan chopped vegetables at the counter. You just have to be willing to try differently, not give up entirely. Maybe I've given up on too many things, then start taking things back one at a time. They ate dinner together, the 3 of them around the kitchen island. Victoria more relaxed than Nathan had seen her. After Sophie fell asleep on the couch, Nathan and Victoria stayed in the kitchen, talking in low voices so as not to wake her. She's remarkable. Victoria watched Sophie's sleeping form through the doorway. Your daughter. She is. Gets her optimism from her mother. I wish I'd met her. Your wife. She would have liked you. Nathan smiled at the memory. Claire had a soft spot for people who hid their kindness behind toughness. I'm not kind. You let a 7-year-old boss you around in your own kitchen. That's kind. Victoria's lips twitched. Fair point. Can I ask you something? Nathan ventured after a moment. Victoria nodded. When was the last time you left this house? Medical appointments. Victoria's answer came quickly, rehearsed. That's it. When was the last time you did something just because you wanted to? Not therapy, not necessity, just for enjoyment. Victoria thought about it, her brow furrowing. I can't remember. That's a problem. You're living like you're waiting for your life to start again, instead of living the life you have now. What do you suggest? Start small. Go to a park. Visit a museum. Get coffee somewhere other than this kitchen. Remind yourself that life is still happening outside these walls. What if people stare? Some will, most won't. And the ones who stare, their discomfort is their problem, not yours. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. Nathan met her eyes. It's scary and uncomfortable and sometimes frustrating, but it's also necessary. You can't heal in isolation. Victoria looked out the window at the city lights spreading below the hillside. Will you come with me? The first time? I don't think I can do it alone, of course. Sophie too, if you want. She's good at making adventures out of ordinary things. I'd like that. As Nathan prepared to leave, carrying a sleeping Sophie, Victoria stopped him. Nathan, he paused in the doorway. Thank you for not letting me stay stuck. That's what I'm here for. Well, that and making sure you don't fire your 24th assistant. You're more than an assistant. Victoria's voice was soft enough, he almost missed it. You're, I don't know what you are exactly, but you're important. You're important too, Victoria. I hope you're starting to believe that. Nathan drove home through dark streets, Sophie warm and solid against his shoulder when he carried her inside. Tom Rodriguez sat on his own porch next door, raising a hand in greeting. Nathan nodded back, thinking about Victoria alone in that massive house, wondering if she was looking at Sophie's drawings, or staring out at the city, or trying to sleep in a bed that probably cost more than his car. His phone buzzed as he tucked Sophie into bed, a text from an unknown number. He opened it, blood going cold at the words. She deserves to know the truth about Oakland. Below the text, a photo, a scanned document, police report header visible. The Mrs. Hendricks case, accusations he'd spent 2 years living down. Someone was digging into his past. Someone wanted Victoria to know. Nathan deleted the text and blocked the number, but his hands shook. The cheam, the stability, Sophie's shoes and the rent catching up, all of it hung on Victoria's trust. If she learned about Oakland from the wrong source, with the wrong context, everything would collapse. He thought about telling her himself, getting ahead of it, controlling the narrative. But what would he say? 2 years ago, a dementia patient accused me of abuse because she thought I was stealing from her. And even though I was cleared, the stigma followed me. And that's why I was desperate enough to take a job everyone else quit. The truth sounded guilty, even when it wasn't. Nathan lay awake most of the night, listening to Sophie's breathing from the next room, weighing his options. By morning, he decided to wait. Maybe the text was random, someone who'd seen him at the agency. Maybe it would go away. Maybe he could keep this job, keep helping Victoria, keep building the fragile thing growing between them. Maybe for once, his past would stay buried. Friday morning arrived with an envelope in Victoria's mailbox, hand-delivered, no postage. She opened it during breakfast, Nathan watching her face change as she read the wedding invitation inside. My ex is getting married. Victoria's voice came out flat. Derek Mitchell. He sent me an invitation like it's some kind of courtesy. The invitation hit the table hard enough to rattle her coffee cup. Nathan picked it up, scanning the elegant script. The wedding was in 6 weeks. Summer court in Napa Valley, black tie optional. Maybe he's just trying to be polite. Polite? Victoria laughed without humor. He left me when I was at my lowest. Now he's marrying some adventure travel blogger who can actually walk. Probably sent the invitation to show me what I could have had if I wasn't broken. Or maybe he's just being polite and you're projecting. Don't defend him. I'm not defending him. Nathan set the invitation down carefully. I'm suggesting your interpretation might be colored by pain. Victoria's hands gripped the wheelchair armrests hard enough her knuckles went white. You don't understand. Marcus left because he didn't want to be with someone in a wheelchair. Said he'd signed up for adventures and excitement, not becoming a caregiver. Made it very clear I wasn't enough anymore. Then he was wrong about you not being enough. Was he, though? Victoria's voice cracked. Look at me, I can't climb mountains, can't travel easily, can't do any of the things that made me who I was. What do I have to offer anyone? You're asking the wrong question. What's the right question then? Not what you can offer, but who you are beyond what you can do. Nathan moved closer, keeping his voice gentle. Your worth isn't determined by your ability to climb mountains. Easy for you to say. Actually, it's not. When Claire died, I asked myself the same question. What did I have to offer as a father when I could barely function? When I couldn't give Sophie her mother back, couldn't take away her grief, couldn't even cook dinner most nights without burning it? That's different. Victoria wouldn't look at him. You're still whole, capable. You can do things. Nathan pulled up a chair and sat at eye level with her. I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone at work. After Claire died, I had a complete breakdown. Couldn't get out of bed for 3 days. Sophie stayed with neighbors while I fell apart. Child services almost got involved. That's how close I came to losing her. Victoria's expression softened, the anger draining into something more complicated. What changed? On day 4, Sophie came into my room. She was 3 years old, climbed into bed with me, and said, "Daddy's sad, but Sophie loves you anyway." Just that simple acceptance that I was broken but still loved. It gave me enough strength to get up, get help, start putting the pieces back together. You had a reason to get up, your daughter. And you have reasons too. They just look different. Every day you do physical therapy, you're choosing to try. Every time you engage with me instead of pushing me away, you're choosing connection. Those are brave choices. They don't feel brave. They never do. Courage never feels like courage when you're in the middle of it. It just feels like surviving one more day. Victoria was silent for a long time, her fingers tracing the edge of the invitation. I was so angry when Marcus left, not just because he left, but because part of me understood why. Who wants to tie themselves to someone who can't be a full partner? Victoria, being a partner isn't about physical ability. Nathan leaned forward. It's about showing up emotionally, supporting each other, building a life together. You can do all of that. Can I? I can barely take care of myself. You're learning to. That's what all this work is about. And for what it's worth, Marcus leaving says more about him than about you. Real love doesn't leave when things get hard. You sound certain. I am. Claire and I had 4 years together after Sophie was born. Good years, hard years, everything in between. When she got sick, she made me promise something. What? To not let grief make me bitter? Nathan's voice roughened. To stay open to connection. To love again if the chance came. She said life was too short to close yourself off because of pain. Have you? Loved again? Nathan smiled sadly. No, haven't met anyone who fits into our life yet. Sophie comes first, always. Most people don't want the complexity of dating a single parent, but I'm not closed to the possibility. Doesn't that make you angry? That your circumstances limit your options? Sometimes, but I choose to see it differently. My circumstances don't limit my options. They clarify them. Anyone who can't accept Sophie and me as a package isn't someone I want anyway. Victoria seemed to consider this carefully. I've been pushing people away because I assume they'll leave eventually, speed up the inevitable. Except some people won't leave. You just have to give them the chance to stay. Like you, like me. The kitchen fell quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and distant traffic from the highway below. Victoria picked up the invitation again, studying it with less venom. I should probably respond, politely decline, or you could just delete it and move on. Nathan stood, stretching. You don't owe him anything. That feels petty. Sometimes petty is appropriate. He hurt you. You're allowed to protect yourself from further contact. Victoria managed a small smile, the first genuine one Nathan had seen from her. When did you become so wise? Years of therapy and countless parenting books. Wisdom is just accumulated mistakes plus self-awareness. By the time Nathan left that Friday evening, Victoria seemed lighter somehow, the ex-boyfriend's wedding invitation in the trash where it belonged. But Nathan's phone felt heavy in his pocket, another unknown text waiting when he checked during the drive home. 2 weeks. Tell her yourself or I will. The threats were escalating. Someone wanted Victoria to know about Oakland, and they were giving him a deadline. Nathan stared at his phone at a red light, Sophie chattering about her day from the back seat, and tried to calculate his options. 2 weeks meant he had time to figure out who was behind this. 2 weeks meant he could maybe get ahead of it, present the truth on his terms. 2 weeks meant he might lose everything anyway. But for now, for tonight, Sophie needed dinner and help with homework. And Victoria needed someone who wouldn't quit. So Nathan pushed the fear down, smiled at his daughter in the rearview mirror, and drove toward home like nothing was wrong. Because sometimes surviving meant pretending you weren't falling apart. Nathan had learned that lesson 4 years ago, and apparently, he still hadn't forgotten how. Monday morning of week 3 brought an unwelcome visitor. Nathan arrived at 7:30 to find a silver Mercedes already parked in the circular drive, sleek and expensive in ways that made his battered sedan look like a relic from another century. The housekeeper met him at the door with an expression that suggested bracing for impact. Catherine Hayes is here, Miss Victoria's sister. Nathan's stomach tightened. The overprotective corporate lawyer Victoria had mentioned exactly once, dismissively, when explaining why she never answered certain phone calls. He found them in the living room, Victoria rigid in her wheelchair, a woman in a designer suit standing with the posture of someone accustomed to courtrooms and boardrooms where intimidation passed for persuasion. Catherine turned as Nathan entered, her assessment taking perhaps 2 seconds before dismissing him as irrelevant. "You must be the new assistant, Nathan Cross." He extended his hand, which she ignored. Another one. Catherine's attention returned to Victoria. "How long will this last?" "Nathan's here to stay." Victoria's voice carried an edge he recognized as defensive rather than confident. Catherine pulled a leather folder from her briefcase, flipping it open to reveal what looked like medical reports. "I've been reviewing Dr. Chen's notes. Your progress is inadequate. 2 years post-injury, and you're still completely wheelchair dependent. I can stand now." Victoria's hands clenched on the armrests. "For almost 30 seconds. Standing isn't walking." Catherine's tone could have frozen water. "You need comprehensive professional care. Not whatever this is." She gestured vaguely at Nathan without looking at him, the dismissal more cutting than any insult. "I've been researching facilities that specialize in spinal cord injuries. There's an excellent center in Arizona with full medical staff, adaptive equipment, everything you need." "You mean institutionalize me? I mean get you proper help." Catherine's voice softened slightly, which somehow made it worse. "Victoria, I'm trying to protect you. This situation, living alone with strangers cycling through every few weeks, it's not sustainable. Nathan isn't a stranger." Victoria wheeled herself forward slightly. "He's been here 3 weeks. That's longer than anyone else." 3 weeks. Catherine's laugh held no warmth. "And you think that's meaningful? He'll leave like the rest once the novelty wears off or you have a bad day." Nathan had been staying quiet, letting Victoria handle her sister, but the casual certainty in Catherine's voice pushed him past professional restraint. "Miss Hayes is making excellent progress." He retrieved the therapy logs from the folder on the side table, opening to the most recent entries. "Core strength up 40%. Transfer independence improving. Standing duration increased from 0 seconds to 30. These are measurable gains." Catherine's eyes flicked to him, actually seeing him for the first time. "And you're qualified to assess this? What exactly are your credentials, Mr. Cross?" 5 years in home health care." Nathan kept his voice level. "I've worked with stroke patients, post-surgical recovery, hospice care. I know what progress looks like." "I'm sure you do." Catherine's smile was sharper than her sister's worst moments. "Victoria, we'll discuss this later. In private." The dismissal was clear, but Victoria surprised them both. "Nathan stays. Anything you want to say, you can say in front of him." Catherine's jaw tightened, the only crack in her polished composure. "Fine. I'm concerned about your judgment. You're isolated, vulnerable, and now you're depending on someone who—" She paused, glancing at Nathan, "someone whose background we know nothing about." The words landed like a warning shot, and Nathan felt the familiar cold dread spreading through his chest. Catherine had already started digging, which meant Oakland was coming whether he controlled the narrative or not. Victoria's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts. "My judgment is fine. Better than it's been in months, actually. Nathan has helped me more in 3 weeks than anyone else managed in 2 years. Or you've become dependent." Catherine closed her folder with practiced precision. "Which is exactly what concerns me. I'm looking into your options, Victoria. Legal options if necessary. You can't force me into a facility. We'll see." Catherine picked up her briefcase, her gaze landing on Nathan one more time. "I'll be in touch, Mr. Cross. I'm going to look into your background very carefully. My sister deserves to know exactly who she's trusting with her care." The threat hung in the air as Catherine left, her heels clicking across marble until the front door closed with expensive finality. Victoria sat frozen, staring at the space her sister had occupied. "I'm sorry." Her voice came out small. "Catherine thinks she's protecting me, but she's just trying to control my life like she's done since our parents died." Nathan wanted to say it was fine, that Catherine's threats didn't matter, but his phone felt heavy in his pocket where 2 anonymous texts had already promised to destroy everything. "She's going to find out about Oakland." Victoria looked up sharply. "Find out what?" The question hung between them, and Nathan made a choice. He could tell her now, frame it himself or wait for Catherine to weaponize it. Before he could speak, Victoria's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her expression shifted. Dr. Chen, probably calling because Catherine got to her first, but the conversation that followed had nothing to do with Catherine. Victoria's face went pale as she listened, then determined. Tomorrow at 6 a.m.? I'll be there. She hung up and met Nathan's eyes. Dr. Chen has an opening for an early session tomorrow. She thinks if we push harder, I might progress to walking with a frame within weeks instead of months. But it means intensive work, early mornings, probably more pain than I've been willing to tolerate. You want to do it. I need to do it. Victoria's hands trembled slightly. I need to show Catherine and everyone else that I'm not helpless, that I don't need to be locked away for my own good. Then we start tomorrow. Nathan pushed aside his own dread about Catherine's investigation. What time should I be here? 6 is fine. But Nathan, her voice stopped him as he moved toward the kitchen. Thank you for standing up to her. Most people are too intimidated by Catherine to even try. I'm not most people, remember? The small smile she gave him felt like a victory, fragile and hard-won. Tuesday morning arrived dark and cold, winter pressing against the mansion's glass walls. Nathan found Victoria already in the gym at 5:45, wheelchair positioned at the parallel bars like a fighter sizing up an opponent. She wore workout clothes instead of her usual careful layers, hair pulled back tight, face set with determination that bordered on desperation. Couldn't sleep. Figured I'd warm up. The bags under her eyes suggested she hadn't slept at all, but Nathan didn't mention it. Chen arrived precisely at 6, carrying equipment Nathan had seen in rehabilitation centers. Ankle weights, resistance bands with different tensions, a walking frame that looked more substantial than the standard parallel bars. Let's see what you can do. Dr. Chen's no-nonsense approach had probably intimidated plenty of patients. But Victoria responded to the challenge in her voice. Show me your best standing position. They worked for 90 minutes, Chen pushing Victoria past every complaint and excuse. The frame replaced the parallel bars, providing mobile support instead of stationary anchoring. Victoria's legs shook violently as she tried to bear weight, face contorting with effort that went beyond physical strain into something that looked like rage at her own body's limitations. Good. Chen's approval came sparingly. Now hold it. 5 more seconds. I can't. You can. Hold it. Victoria held it, tears streaming down her face from exertion, until Chen finally released her and Nathan helped her back into the wheelchair. Victoria collapsed into the seat, breathing hard, sweat darkening her shirt. Same time tomorrow. Chen packed her equipment with efficient movements. You have the strength. You just need the will to push past pain into progress. After she left, Victoria sat motionless for several minutes, staring at nothing. Nathan gave her space, knowing that kind of physical effort required mental recovery time as well. Finally, she spoke without looking at him. When I fell, I remember thinking I was dead. 50 feet of nothing underneath me, harness failing, just air and gravity, and knowing this was it. Then I hit the ledge 12 feet down instead of the ground. Broke my back, but lived. Everyone kept saying how lucky I was. You didn't feel lucky. I felt cheated. Victoria's voice was flat. If I was going to survive, why couldn't I survive whole? Why leave me broken but breathing? Nathan moved to sit on the bench near her wheelchair. Because surviving broken is still surviving. You get to choose what you do with it. Choose? She laughed bitterly. I didn't choose this. I didn't choose Derek leaving, or Catherine trying to lock me away, or any of it. No, but you chose to get up at 5:45 this morning. You chose to push yourself until you cried. You chose to keep trying when quitting would be easier. Those are choices that matter. Victoria wiped at her face, smearing away sweat and tears. Catherine called last night. After you left, she's filing paperwork to become my legal guardian. Says I'm mentally incompetent to make my own decisions about care. Nathan's chest tightened. On what grounds? On the grounds that I hired someone with questionable credentials and developed an inappropriate attachment that clouds my judgment. Victoria met his eyes. She hired a private investigator to look into your background. Said she'd have a full report by week's end. The dread Nathan had been carrying exploded into full panic. He had maybe days before Catherine uncovered Oakland, twisted it into proof that Victoria couldn't be trusted to choose her own care providers, used it as ammunition in her guardianship case. His throat felt tight, words catching before they could form. "There's something I need to tell you." But Victoria's phone rang again before he could continue, and this time her expression when she answered moved from annoyed to confused to something that might have been hope. "Derek, No, I got the invitation. I'm not going to your wedding." She listened for a long moment, her face cycling through emotions too quickly for Nathan to track. "Finally, you want to talk, in person. I don't think that's a good idea." Another pause, shorter this time. "Fine, tomorrow at 2. But Nathan will be here." She hung up and sat very still. "My ex-boyfriend is coming here tomorrow. Says he made a mistake sending the invitation. That he needs to talk to me about something important. Wouldn't say what over the phone." Nathan's hands clenched involuntarily. "You want me here when he comes?" "Yes." Victoria's voice was firm. "I don't trust myself alone with him. He's very good at making me doubt my own judgment." The next afternoon arrived with Derek Mitchell's appearance precisely at 2 p.m., driving a Range Rover that screamed outdoor adventure brand sponsorships. He was everything Nathan had pictured. Tanned, fit, wearing technical fabric clothing with logos positioned for maximum visibility. His smile was practiced, his handshake too firm, his assessment of Nathan dismissive in the same way Catherine's had been. "And you must be the new caregiver." Derek barely looked at him before turning his full attention to Victoria. "Vic, you look amazing, really. I heard you were making progress." Victoria's expression remained neutral. "What do you want, Derek? Can we talk? Privately?" Nathan stays. Derek's smile tightened fractionally. "Of course. Whatever makes you comfortable." He pulled a chair close to Victoria's wheelchair, invading her space in a way that made Nathan's jaw clench. "I made a mistake, Vic. Huge mistake. Leaving you was the biggest regret of my life, and I think about it every day. You're getting married in 6 weeks. That's what I came to tell you." Derek reached for her hand, and Victoria didn't pull away fast enough. "I'm calling it off. The invitation was a mistake. A moment of panic because I didn't think I deserved you anymore. But seeing you fighting, making progress, it reminded me of who you really are." "Who I really am." Victoria's voice was ice. "Or who I used to be before I became inconvenient." "You were never inconvenient." Derek's practiced sincerity made Nathan want to throw him out physically. "I was scared, immature. I didn't know how to handle what happened. But I've grown. I've changed. In 2 years. In 2 years of missing you every single day." Derek squeezed her hand. "I've been researching adaptive climbing equipment. New technology that would let us climb together again. We could have our old life back, modified but still ours." Nathan watched Victoria's face, seeing the war playing out between wanting to believe and knowing better. She pulled her hand free gently. "Our old life included you being supportive when things were hard. You failed that test, I know. Let me take it again. Let me prove I can be who you needed then and who you need now." The door opened and Nathan entered with water bottles he'd deliberately gone to fetch, giving Derek a pointed look. "Victoria needs to rest. Her therapy session this morning was intense." Derek stood, smoothing his expression, back to friendly. "Of course, I don't want to tire you out." He pulled a card from his wallet, setting it on the table beside Victoria. "I'm staying at the Fairmont for the week. Call me, Vic. Please, just think about what I said." After he left, the mansion felt too quiet again. Victoria stared at the business card like it might bite. "He's very convincing." Nathan kept his voice neutral. "He always was. That's how he convinced me to free climb without checking my equipment thoroughly enough." Victoria wheeled herself to the window. "Part of me wants to believe him, wants to think people can change that much. People can change, but usually not that fast and usually not for the right reasons." "You think he wants something?" Nathan hesitated, then decided honesty mattered more than tact. "I think he left when you needed him most, and now that you're making progress, he sees an opportunity to reclaim the adventurous girlfriend without the harder parts of recovery. But I could be wrong. You're not wrong." Victoria pressed her forehead against the glass. "You're exactly right, and I hate that I still want to give him a chance anyway. That's not weakness. That's hope. And hope is hard to kill even when it should be." They stayed like that for a while, Victoria at the window, Nathan a respectful distance away, both avoiding the conversation about Catherine's investigation that needed to happen. The reprieve lasted until Friday morning, when Nathan's phone rang during breakfast preparation. Tom Rodriguez's voice carried panic Nathan had never heard from the steady retired mechanic. "Nathan, Sophie collapsed at school. Ambulance is taking her to Children's Hospital. You need to get there now." The world tilted sideways. Nathan gripped the counter to stay upright. "What happened?" "Don't know. School called me when they couldn't reach you. She was in class, then she just went down. They think maybe pneumonia, maybe worse. I'm on my way." Nathan turned to find Victoria had wheeled into the kitchen, reading the panic on his face. "What's wrong?" "Sophie. Hospital. I have to go." "Go. Don't even think about me. Your daughter needs you." "But I can't leave you without—" Victoria's voice cut through his spiral. "I don't matter right now. Sophie needs her father. Go!" Nathan grabbed his keys and ran, the mansion's front door slamming behind him hard enough to rattle its expensive frame. The drive to Children's Hospital took 20 minutes that felt like hours, traffic conspiring to test his sanity at every light. He parked illegally and sprinted to the emergency entrance, where a nurse directed him to the pediatric ICU room. Sophie lay tiny and pale in a bed surrounded by monitors, IV lines running into her small arms. Tom sat in the corner, standing when Nathan burst through the door. "They're saying severe pneumonia." Tom's voice was rough. "Maybe sepsis. They've got her on strong antibiotics, but the next 24 hours are critical." Nathan sank into the chair beside Sophie's bed, taking her hand carefully around the IV. Her fever burned through the thin hospital gown. Her breathing labored even with oxygen support. She didn't wake when he spoke her name. "I can't lose her." The words came out broken, all his control fracturing. "She's all I have." Tom gripped his shoulder. "She's strong, like her dad." But Nathan couldn't feel strong. He felt like he had 4 years ago when Claire stopped responding to treatment, when hope became a cruel joke and prayers went unanswered. Sophie was 7 years old and fighting an infection that might kill her, and Nathan was completely powerless to help beyond sitting beside her bed and willing her to survive through sheer force of love. Hours blurred together. Nurses came and went, checking monitors, adjusting medications, speaking in gentle tones that somehow made everything worse. Tom brought coffee, Nathan didn't drink, and food he couldn't eat. By evening, Sophie's fever had climbed higher, her small body fighting a war Nathan couldn't see or help with. His phone buzzed repeatedly, messages from Victoria asking for updates. Nathan sent brief responses, too exhausted for more, until Tom took the phone from him. "You should let her know you're not coming back for a while. You're on leave until Sophie's better." "I can't afford to lose the job. You can't afford to lose your daughter." Tom's voice was firm. "Your job will be there or it won't, but Sophie needs you here now." Nathan nodded, too tired to argue, watching his daughter's chest rise and fall with mechanical assistance. The night stretched on, interrupted only by medical staff and the rhythmic beep of monitors tracking Sophie's vital signs. He dozed fitfully in the chair, waking at every alarm, every change in her breathing pattern. Saturday morning brought no improvement. Sophie's fever held steady at dangerous levels, the infection refusing to respond to the first round of antibiotics. The ICU doctor spoke in careful terms about switching to more aggressive treatment, about complications they were monitoring, about the next 48 hours being crucial. Nathan heard the words through a fog of exhaustion and fear that tasted like the worst days of Claire's illness. He'd survived losing his wife. He couldn't survive losing his daughter, too. Around noon, Tom left to get actual food and returned looking puzzled. "There's someone here to see you. Says her name is Victoria." Nathan's head jerked up. "She can't be here. She doesn't leave the house except for medical appointments." "Well, she's in the waiting room right now. Came with Dr. Chen, apparently." Nathan walked to the ICU waiting room on autopilot and stopped dead at the sight of Victoria Hayes in her wheelchair, wearing street clothes instead of her usual home comfort wear, looking simultaneously terrified and determined. Dr. Chen stood behind her, car keys in hand. "What are you doing here? You were here for me." Victoria's voice was steady despite the fear in her eyes. "I'm here for you. You didn't have to." "Yes, I did. Sophie is family, and family shows up." The word hit Nathan harder than expected. Family. This woman he'd known for 3 weeks, who'd tested him and pushed him away and slowly let him in, had left the safety of her mansion to sit in a hospital for a little girl who'd drawn her dragon pictures. The gesture overwhelmed his already fractured composure. "She's not getting better," his voice cracked. "The infection is spreading, and I don't know what to do, and I can't lose her, Victoria. I can't." Victoria wheeled forward and took his hand, her grip stronger than he expected. "Then we sit with her together. We don't leave her alone, and we make sure she knows she's loved, because sometimes that's all we can do." They sat vigil together, Nathan and Victoria trading places at Sophie's bedside while Dr. Chen made calls to colleagues about the case. Victoria read to Sophie from books Tom brought from their apartment, children's stories about dragons and knights and adventures. Her voice was soft but steady, filling the sterile ICU room with warmth. When Sophie stirred late Sunday evening, the first face she focused on was Victoria's. "Miss Hayes." The words came out barely above a whisper. "I'm here, sweetheart." Victoria's composure finally cracked, tears sliding down her face. "Your dad's here too. We've got you." Sophie's eyes found Nathan. "Daddy?" "Right here, baby. I'm right here." Sophie's fingers twitched weakly in his hand. "You came." "Of course I came." Nathan couldn't stop the tears. "I'll always come." "Miss Hayes, too." "That's right." Victoria leaned closer. "I came too, because you're my family, and I take care of my family." Sophie managed the smallest smile before drifting back to sleep, but her breathing seemed easier, her color fractionally better. The doctor came by an hour later with news that her fever had finally started dropping. The antibiotics were working. She'd turned a corner. Nathan put his head in his hands and sobbed with relief he didn't have words for. Victoria's hand found his shoulder, solid and real, anchoring him while he fell apart. That night, with Sophie stable and sleeping naturally, Victoria insisted Nathan go home to shower and rest. Dr. Chen would drive her back to the mansion, and Tom would stay with Sophie. Nathan was too exhausted to argue effectively. "You saved me today." He looked at Victoria in the harsh fluorescent lighting of the hospital parking garage. "Coming here, being present. I couldn't have done this alone." "You're not alone." Victoria's expression was fierce. "Not anymore. None of us are." Dr. Chen drove them back in silence, dropping Nathan at his apartment before taking Victoria home. Nathan showered in a daze, fell into bed fully clothed, and slept dreamlessly for the first time in days. Monday morning he returned to find Sophie awake and eating, color returning to her face. The ICU doctor talking about transferring her to a regular room. Tom sat in the corner grinning, and everything felt like maybe the world hadn't completely fallen apart. Victoria arrived around noon, having clearly arranged the visit with Dr. Chen in advance. She brought Sophie's drawings from the mansion. Dragons and castles and families having adventures. "I thought you might want these." Victoria wheeled close to the bed. "To remember we're all waiting for you to come home." Sophie's voice was still weak but gaining strength. "You came back." "Of course I came back. Family keeps showing up, remember?" Over the next 3 days, Sophie improved rapidly enough that doctors discussed discharge. Nathan split his time between the hospital and Victoria's house, trying to keep up with both responsibilities until Victoria made it clear he was on paid leave until Sophie was fully recovered. "I don't need a caregiver right now. I need you focused on your daughter. We'll figure out work schedules when she's better." The generosity overwhelmed him, especially when Victoria added that she'd arranged for a private nurse to help with Sophie's home recovery. Nathan tried to refuse. The obligation, the power imbalance it created. "She's my family too." Victoria's tone left no room for argument. "Let me help." Wednesday afternoon, Derek appeared at the hospital. Nathan was grabbing coffee when he returned to find the adventure blogger sitting beside Sophie's bed, talking to her in tones too low to hear. Protective instinct flared hot and immediate. "Can I help you?" Derek stood smoothly, that practiced smile appearing. "Just heard about Sophie and wanted to check in. Victoria mentioned she's been coming here." The possessive way he said Victoria's name made Nathan's hands clench. "That's kind of you, but Sophie needs rest." "Of course." Derek glanced at Sophie one more time before heading for the door. "Tell Vic I stopped by. We're supposed to have dinner tomorrow, and I wanted to make sure she was still up for it." After he left, Nathan stood frozen. Victoria hadn't mentioned dinner plans with Derek, which meant either she'd made them after the hospital visits or Derek was lying. Either option sat wrong in his chest. When Victoria arrived that evening, Nathan asked directly, "Derek said you have dinner plans tomorrow?" Victoria's expression shifted to something between guilt and defiance. He's been persistent. I finally agreed to one dinner, in public, just to hear him out properly. Dr. Chen will drive me. You don't owe him anything. I know. But I need to close this door myself, on my terms. Victoria met his eyes. Does that bother you? The question hung heavy with implications neither of them had addressed. Nathan chose his words carefully. I think you deserve someone who stayed when things got hard. But it's your decision. What would you do if it were you? I'd remember that people show you who they are in crisis. Derek showed you then. Believe him. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. You're right, but I need to tell him myself, face to face, that there's no second chance. Otherwise, he'll keep circling. Fair enough. Thursday evening passed anxiously while Victoria had dinner with Derek. Nathan stayed at the hospital with Sophie, who was finally being discharged the next morning. But his mind wandered to restaurant conversations he couldn't hear. When his phone rang around 9, Victoria's number appeared. Can Dr. Chen bring me to the hospital? I need to talk to you. 30 minutes later, she rolled into Sophie's room looking exhausted. Derek had pushed harder than expected, brought photos from their climbing days, talked about modified equipment that could restore their old adventures, offered everything except an apology for leaving when she needed him. What did you tell him? Victoria's voice was steady. That I'm not the person in those photos anymore, and I don't want to be. That I've built a new life with new people who matter more than old adventures. That he's too late. How did he take it? About as well as a man who's used to getting what he wants takes being told no. But it's done. Victoria reached for Nathan's hand. I chose. The weight of those words settled between them, meaning more than either was ready to fully articulate. Nathan squeezed her hand gently, aware that Sophie was pretending to sleep while listening to every word. Friday morning brought Sophie's discharge and the unexpected arrival of Catherine Hayes at the hospital. She swept into the room with her briefcase and lawyer demeanor, taking in Victoria's presence with barely concealed disapproval. I've been trying to reach you for days. Catherine's tone was sharp. We need to discuss the guardianship petition I'm filing. Not now. Victoria positioned her wheelchair between Catherine and Sophie's bed. We're in a hospital. Actually, now is perfect. Catherine pulled documents from her briefcase. Because I have the private investigator's report on Mr. Cross, and I think you need to see it before you continue exposing yourself and children to potential danger. Nathan's blood turned to ice. Catherine slapped the folder on the bedside table, photos and police reports visible through the clear plastic cover. The Oakland case, Mrs. Hendricks, accusations of elder abuse in stark black and white. 2 years ago, your trusted caregiver was accused of abusing a dementia patient. Catherine's voice carried the satisfaction of someone who just won an argument. The case was dismissed on technicalities, but the allegation stands. This is who you've trusted with your care, Victoria. This is the kind of judgment that proves you need a guardian. Victoria stared at the report, her expression unreadable. Nathan wanted to explain, to contextualize, to make her understand, but the words caught in his throat. Sophie was awake now, watching everything with wide eyes, and the hospital room felt too small for the destruction happening inside it. Get out! Victoria's voice was cold enough to freeze. Both of you, Catherine, take your reports and leave. Nathan, give me space. But, out. Now, Nathan left on shaking legs, Catherine following with evident satisfaction. In the hallway, she turned to him with something almost like pity. You should have told her yourself. Now she knows you're not just unqualified, you're dangerous. The case was dismissed. Nathan's voice came out hoarse. Mrs. Hendricks had dementia. She thought I was stealing from her, attacked me, and I restrained her safely according to my training. The family sued, but the court found no evidence of abuse. Doesn't matter. Catherine snapped her briefcase closed. The accusation exists. Victoria now knows you've been lying by omission, and that will be Exhibit A in my guardianship case. She walked away, heels clicking purposefully, leaving Nathan alone in the corridor, with his career dissolving around him. Tom appeared from the waiting room, having witnessed enough to understand. Go in there. Tell her the truth before she builds it up in her head as worse than it is. Nathan knocked softly before entering. Victoria sat by the window, the investigation report open in her lap, her face unreadable. I can explain, then explain. Nathan sat carefully, maintaining distance, and told her everything. Mrs. Hendricks and her advancing dementia. The day she became violent, convinced Nathan was robbing her. His training kicking in, restraining her safely until help arrived. The family's lawsuit born from grief and misunderstanding. The dismissal after evidence proved his innocence. The stigma that followed anyway, making employment nearly impossible. Why didn't you tell me? Victoria's voice was carefully controlled. Would you have hired me if you knew? She was quiet for a long moment. Probably not. That's why. Nathan met her eyes. I needed the two. Sophie needed stability, and I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, but explaining that sounds exactly like what a guilty person would say. So you lied by omission? Yes. Victoria closed the folder, setting it aside. Catherine thinks this proves I can't make sound decisions, that I'm vulnerable and easily manipulated by the first person who shows me kindness. What do you think? I think, Victoria's voice wavered slightly. I think you've been with me through standing practice and ex-boyfriends and my daughter's hospitalization. I think you stood up to my sister when you didn't have to. I think if you were going to hurt me, you've had plenty of opportunities. You're not firing me. Should I be? If you think Catherine's right about me being dangerous, yes. But if you believe I am who I've shown you these past weeks, then no. Victoria studied him for a long moment, and Nathan held his breath. Finally, she spoke. I believe you. The past doesn't define us. How we face it does. Those were your words. They were. Then I'm holding you to them. Victoria's expression shifted to something fiercer. And now I'm going to fight Catherine's guardianship petition with everything I have. Because she doesn't get to decide my life based on fear and control. You'll need a lawyer. I'll need a lot of things. Victoria reached for his hand, starting with someone who doesn't give up on me. Are you still that person? Always, Sophie spoke up from the bed, her voice still weak but determined. Miss Hayes, are you still my family? Victoria's composure cracked, tears finally falling. Forever, sweetheart. Nothing changes that. They left the hospital together, Nathan carrying Sophie, Victoria following in her wheelchair, Tom bringing up the rear. Catherine might have ammunition now, but she'd underestimated what she was fighting against. Not just Victoria's determination, but the family they'd built from broken pieces and second chances. The battle was just beginning, but for the first time in years, Nathan felt like he had something worth fighting for beyond simple survival. Week 8 arrived with legal documents delivered by courier. Nathan signed for the envelope at Victoria's front door, recognizing the law firm letterhead before opening it. The petition for emergency guardianship named Catherine Hayes as proposed guardian, citing Victoria's isolation, questionable judgment in hiring caregivers, and alleged mental incompetence. Attached was a temporary restraining order. Nathan Cross was to cease all contact with Victoria Hayes immediately, pending investigation into his suitability as a care provider. The paper shook in his hands. Catherine had moved faster than expected, weaponizing the Oakland report into legal grounds for control. Failure to comply could result in criminal charges for violating a court order. Victoria read the documents in silence, her face cycling through shock to fury to something that looked like defeat. She can actually do this. Take away my right to choose my own life. The hearing is in 3 weeks. Nathan scanned the legal language, looking for loopholes. If you can prove competence, show that you're making sound decisions. How? By demonstrating I hired someone with an abuse allegation? That's Catherine's entire argument. Victoria's hands clenched on the papers. She's going to win. Not if we fight. Nathan pulled out his phone. You need Marcus Hartley, your family lawyer. He'll say the same thing Catherine's saying. That I'm vulnerable and making poor choices. Then we prove you're not vulnerable. We document your progress. Get Dr. Chen's testimony. Show the court you're improving specifically because of the care choices you made. Victoria looked at him with exhaustion that went bone deep. And what about you? The order says you can't have contact with me. If you stay, you're violating a court order. The implications settled like lead in Nathan's stomach. If he left, Victoria faced the guardianship battle alone while Catherine presented her case unopposed. If he stayed, he risked arrest, losing Sophie permanently if child services decided he was unfit. The choice between protecting Victoria and protecting his daughter wasn't a choice at all. I have to go. The words tasted like failure, but Victoria nodded. I know. Sophie needs a father who's not in jail. This isn't forever. Nathan stood, already feeling the distance opening between them. Just until the hearing. We'll fight this properly, through lawyers and evidence. Victoria wheeled herself to the window, staring out at gardens she'd barely seen from ground level. Go, before Catherine finds another reason to make this worse. Nathan left the mansion knowing he might never return. The agency would assign Victoria a new caregiver, someone Catherine would probably approve, someone who wouldn't challenge her or push Victoria beyond comfort. 3 weeks until the hearing meant 3 weeks of Victoria backsliding into isolation while Catherine built her case for permanent control. At his apartment, Sophie was coloring at the kitchen table under Tom Rodriguez's watchful eye. She looked up with a smile that dimmed when she saw Nathan's expression. We have to stay away from Miss Hayes for a while. Winding. Sophie's crayon froze mid-stroke. Did we do something wrong? No, baby. Grown-up legal stuff. Her sister thinks I'm not good for her. But you helped her stand. Sophie's indignation was fierce. You made her happy. Sometimes people don't see what's really happening. Nathan pulled his daughter close. But we're going to fix it, okay? The next 3 weeks passed in slow agony. Nathan found work at a hardware store, minimum wage and mindless, stocking shelves and avoiding thoughts of Victoria alone in that cold mansion. Tom brought news occasionally. Dr. Chen still came for therapy sessions, but reported that Victoria's motivation had evaporated. The temporary caregiver lasted 4 days before quitting. Victoria refused a replacement. Sophie drew pictures of dragons and knights that she couldn't deliver, stacking them on her dresser like prayers. Nathan called Marcus Hartley and learned what he'd expected. The guardianship case was strong without evidence of Victoria's competence and progress. Dr. Chen's testimony would help, but Catherine had her own medical experts who'd argue Victoria needed institutional care. Nathan's testimony would be dismissed as biased, potentially harmful given the restraining order. You're the reason she's in this position. Hartley's voice carried regret rather than accusation. If you'd never been hired, Catherine wouldn't have grounds for the mental incompetence claim. So I destroyed her life by trying to help it. You both made choices that seemed right at the time. Now we deal with consequences. 2 weeks before the hearing, Nathan received a call from an unknown number. Victoria's voice came through, shaky but determined. I'm not supposed to be talking to you, but I needed you to know I'm working. Every day, the standing practice, the frame walking, everything. If I can show the court I'm improving, maybe they'll see Catherine's wrong. You're doing this alone? Dr. Chen helps when she comes, but mostly yes. I have to prove I can be independent. Be careful. Nathan's chest tightened. You could hurt yourself without proper support. I've hurt myself plenty with proper support. At least this time I'm choosing it. Victoria paused and Nathan heard something in the silence that sounded like longing. Sophie okay? She misses you, draws you pictures every day. I miss her too. Both of you. This house is too quiet without her stories and your terrible jokes. They're not terrible, they're dad jokes. There's a difference. The laugh Victoria gave him was worth risking the phone call. Nathan, when this is over, regardless of how it goes, thank you for seeing me as more than my limitations. You never had limitations, just circumstances you're learning to navigate. After hanging up, Nathan stared at his phone for a long time. 3 weeks ago, Victoria couldn't stand without support. Now she was attempting frame walking alone in that mansion, driven by desperation to prove herself worthy of autonomy. The image of her falling without anyone to help made his hands shake. Tom found him on the apartment steps that evening, staring at nothing. You look like a man who's lost something important. I think I might have. Nathan's voice came out hollow. I came to help her, and instead I made everything worse. You gave her reason to fight. Tom settled onto the step beside him. Before you showed up, she'd given up. Now she's working herself into the ground trying to prove she deserves freedom. That's not worse. That's what hope looks like when it's desperate. What if she loses? What if Catherine wins and locks her away somewhere? Then you figure out the next fight. But Nathan, Tom's weathered hand gripped his shoulder. Maybe the fight isn't just about Victoria keeping her freedom. Maybe it's about you both figuring out what you're willing to risk for each other. The words settled into Nathan's bones and stayed there, growing heavier as the hearing date approached. The night before court, Sophie climbed into his bed around midnight, unable to sleep. What if they say Miss Hayes has to go away? Then we find ways to visit her. Nathan pulled his daughter close. But I think she's stronger than people realize. She might surprise everyone. She's the strongest person I know. Except you, Daddy. Why except me? Because you're the strongest person in the whole world. Nathan held his 7-year-old and hoped she'd never learn how fragile strength actually was, how easily it could shatter under the weight of impossible choices. The courthouse was modern glass and steel, nothing like the warm wood-paneled buildings from TV shows. Nathan arrived early with Sophie and Tom, finding seats in the gallery while lawyers gathered at their tables. Catherine sat perfectly composed in designer armor, her attorney a sharp-eyed woman who looked like she'd never lost an argument. Marcus Hartley shuffled papers at the defense table, competent but outmatched. Victoria entered last, wheeled in by Dr. Boucher, Chen wearing a simple dress that somehow made her look both vulnerable and fierce. She didn't look at Nathan, keeping her gaze straight ahead as Chen positioned her wheelchair at the defense table. The distance between them felt measured in miles rather than courtroom feet. Judge Thompson entered, a woman in her 60s with the expression of someone who had heard every manipulation and lie the legal system could produce. She surveyed the courtroom before speaking. This is a guardianship hearing for Victoria Hayes. Ms. Catherine Hayes seeks emergency guardianship citing mental incompetence and vulnerability. Let's proceed. Catherine's attorney opened with surgical precision. May it please the court, the evidence will show that Victoria Hayes, while physically disabled, has demonstrated a pattern of poor judgment that endangers her well-being. She has isolated herself, refused professional medical care, and formed inappropriate attachments to unqualified caregivers. The attorney presented the Oakland report, police photographs and all, making Nathan's dismissed case sound like proof of predatory behavior. She called a neuropsychologist who testified about isolation's effects on judgment, noting that Victoria's withdrawal from social contact suggested possible depression and impaired decision-making capacity. Catherine took the stand wearing an expression of pained concern. I love my sister. Since our parents died, I've tried to protect her, especially after the accident. But Victoria refuses help. She's gone through 24 caregivers in 8 months because she can't maintain healthy professional relationships. Her attorney guided Catherine through a narrative of rejection and poor choices, culminating in Nathan's hiring. You discovered Mr. Cross had a history of abuse allegations? Yes. My private investigator found police reports from Oakland. When I showed Victoria, she refused to dismiss him. That's when I knew her judgment was too impaired for her to protect herself. The words painted Victoria as helpless prey and Nathan as predator, twisting 3 weeks of hard-won progress into evidence of manipulation. Nathan's hands clenched until Tom placed a steadying grip on his shoulder. Hartley's cross-examination barely dented Catherine's composure. When asked if Victoria had made measurable physical progress, Catherine admitted improvement, but attributed it to Dr. Chen's expertise rather than Nathan's involvement. When questioned about alternative care options, Catherine presented brochures for expensive facilities with full medical staff. Your sister could receive this level of care at home with proper support. She's tried that. Catherine's voice carried practiced patience. 24 failed attempts. At some point, we have to accept she needs more structured intervention. The morning session ended badly. Nathan could read it in Hartley's expression and the way Dr. Chen's jaw tightened, in Victoria's rigid posture as they wheeled her to a private room during recess. He wanted to go to her, to offer some reassurance, but the restraining order kept him anchored to his seat while Catherine's attorney built walls around Victoria's freedom. The afternoon brought the defense's case. Hartley called Dr. Chen first, who testified about Victoria's remarkable progress over 8 weeks. Her core strength has improved 40%. Standing duration went from 0 to sustained periods exceeding 1 minute. These gains directly correlate with Mr. Cross's tenure as her caregiver. Catherine's attorney attacked on cross-examination. But she still requires a wheelchair for daily mobility, correct? For longer distances, yes, and she still cannot perform basic self-care tasks without assistance? She's learning adaptive techniques that, yes or no, doctor, can Victoria Hayes live independently right now? Chen's reluctance was visible. Not entirely independently, no. The admission landed like a stone. Hartley tried to recover by calling witnesses to Victoria's cognitive abilities. Her financial advisor testifying she'd managed complex investments competently throughout her disability. Her former climbing partner speaking to her intelligence and determination. But Catherine's attorney made each witness acknowledge Victoria's isolation, her limited social contact, her dependency on paid caregivers. When Hartley announced Nathan as the next witness, Catherine's attorney objected. Your Honor, Mr. Cross is subject to a restraining order for Victoria's protection. His testimony is not only biased, but potentially harmful. Judge Thompson considered this. Mr. Hartley, your client sought this order. You can't now claim his testimony is essential. Nathan's chance to defend Victoria evaporated with the judge's ruling. Hartley moved on to character witnesses. Tom Rodriguez describing Nathan's dedication as a father and professional. The agency coordinator testifying about his positive record prior to Oakland. But without Nathan's own voice, the narrative remained Catherine's to control. The final witness caught everyone off guard. Sophie Cross, called by Marcus Hartley against Nathan's whispered protest. The 7-year-old walked to the stand with her shoulders back, clutching one of her dragon drawings. Sophie, do you know Miss Hayes? Yes, she's my family. How did you meet her? Daddy brought me to her house when I was sick. She was scared of kids, but I drew her a dragon and she liked it. We became friends. Hartley guided Sophie through descriptions of Victoria's improvements, the cooking together, the standing practice Sophie had witnessed. Can you tell the court what you saw Miss Hayes do? She stood up. Sophie's voice carried pure excitement. At those bar things, Daddy helped, but she did it herself. She was crying because she was so happy. Catherine's attorney declined to cross-examine a child, which was probably wise given Sophie's fierce loyalty. But the testimony felt thin against hours of expert witnesses and Catherine's systematic dismantling of Victoria's autonomy. Judge Thompson called for closing arguments as afternoon shadows stretched across the courtroom. Catherine's attorney summarized efficiently, Victoria Hayes needed protection from her own impaired judgment, and guardianship was the compassionate choice to ensure her safety and well-being. Hartley countered with passion, but limited evidence. Victoria deserved autonomy, had made genuine progress, and shouldn't be institutionalized against her will. Before I rule, I'd like to hear from Victoria Hayes herself. Judge Thompson looked directly at the defense table. Miss Hayes, this is your life we're discussing. Do you have anything to say? Victoria sat very still for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice carrying across the courtroom. Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to demonstrate something. The courtroom stirred with confusion. Victoria looked at Dr. Chen, who produced a walker from behind the defense table. Nathan's breath caught. He knew that equipment, had seen it in the gym, but Victoria had never successfully used it in his presence. I've been practicing. Victoria's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the wheelchair arms. Alone, mostly, because I needed to know I could do this without help before I could ask the court to believe I deserve autonomy. Miss Hayes, I don't think physical demonstrations are, Judge Thompson began, but Victoria was already moving. She pushed herself up from the wheelchair, legs shaking but holding weight. Her hands found the walker's grips, white-knuckled but steady. The courtroom went silent as Victoria took one step, then another, her face contorted with effort, sweat already dampening her hairline, but she kept moving. 3 steps, 4, 5. Catherine's face had gone pale. Nathan couldn't breathe, watching Victoria walk across a courtroom when 3 weeks ago she could barely stand. 6 steps, 7. Every muscle in her legs trembled visibly, but she didn't stop until she'd crossed 10 feet of open space. Then she turned, showing the court her face, and spoke between gasps for air. I did this. Without Nathan. Taught myself. Proved I could. But the reason I had strength to try? Him and Sophie. They gave me reason to fight. Victoria's legs finally gave out and she caught herself on the walker, lowering carefully back toward her wheelchair. Dr. Chen rushed to assist, but Victoria waved her off for one more moment. Catherine says I make poor decisions. Maybe I do. But choosing Nathan Cross was the best decision I've made since my accident. He didn't coddle me, didn't let me give up, saw me as a person, not a problem. If that's impaired judgment, then I hope I never recover. She sank into the wheelchair, exhausted and shaking, but her gaze stayed on the judge. I don't need a guardian. I need people who believe I'm worth the effort of healing. Nathan and Sophie gave me that. Don't take it away. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Thompson banged her gavel once, silence falling immediately. Miss Hayes, that was remarkable. How long have you been able to walk? 3 weeks, since Nathan had to leave. Victoria's voice steadied. I pushed myself because I had to prove something, but I only got this far because he taught me I was stronger than I believed. Judge Thompson looked from Victoria to Catherine to the assembled lawyers. I'll be brief. This court sees no evidence of mental incompetence. Victoria Hayes just demonstrated cognitive function, forward planning, and physical determination that exceeds what most people could manage under pressure. The judge's gaze settled on Catherine. Ms. Hayes, your concern for your sister is noted. But concern doesn't justify removing someone's fundamental rights. Victoria has shown she's making informed decisions about her care, decisions that are producing measurable results. Guardianship petition denied. Victoria Hayes retains full autonomy over her medical care, living situation, and personal relationships. The gavel's crack was final. Catherine stood abruptly and left without a word, her attorney gathering papers in stiff silence. Victoria sat very still, as if afraid to believe the ruling was real. Nathan moved before thinking, the restraining order now void, crossing the courtroom to kneel beside her wheelchair. You walked. All this time you were learning to walk. I needed to prove I could do it alone. Victoria's eyes were wet. Before I could ask you to stay. Outside the courthouse, afternoon sun painted everything golden. Tom waited with Sophie, who launched herself at Victoria the moment they emerged. You walked in there. I knew you could do it. Victoria caught the little girl in a careful hug. I couldn't have done it without your dragon drawings giving me courage. Sophie beamed, then turned to Nathan with sudden seriousness. Daddy, can we go home now? To Miss Hayes's house? That depends on Miss Hayes. Nathan looked at Victoria, the question hanging unspoken between them. Actually, there's something I need to do first. Victoria's voice was steadier now, though exhaustion lined her face. Nathan, you're fired. His heart stopped. What? Effective immediately, I'm terminating your employment with the agency. Paperwork will be filed tomorrow. Nathan couldn't form words. After everything, after the courtroom and the walking and the declaration that hiring him was her best decision, because you can't be my employee anymore. Victoria's expression was vulnerable beneath the determination. The court just ruled our relationship was appropriate, but it won't stay that way if you're working for me. Power imbalance, exploitation concerns. Catherine will find another angle eventually. So you're firing me to protect us both. I'm firing you so we can be equals. Victoria reached for his hand. So I can say what I should have said weeks ago. I love you. I love Sophie. You make me want to live instead of just exist, and I don't want to lose that because of professional boundaries. Nathan's throat was too tight for speech. He dropped to one knee beside the wheelchair, holding her hand in both of his. I love you too. The words came out rough, both of us do. But Victoria, I have nothing to offer except everything I need. Victoria's voice was fierce. You offer partnership, belief, family. That's worth more than anything money can buy. Sophie launched into a victory dance. I told Daddy to kiss you weeks ago. Tom laughed from his respectful distance. Kids got good instincts. Nathan leaned in, careful of the wheelchair between them, and kissed Victoria properly for the first time. The courthouse steps were hardly romantic, and curious onlookers definitely watched, but nothing in his life had felt more right than this moment. When they finally broke apart, Marcus Hartley approached with an envelope. Victoria, there's something I need to give you. Your father left instructions when he died. A letter to be delivered when you'd found someone worthy of your heart. I believe that time is now. Victoria took the envelope with shaking hands, Nathan reading over her shoulder as she unfolded pages written in elegant script. Victoria, my brave girl, if Marcus is giving you this, it means you've found someone special. Someone who sees past your fierce exterior to the kind heart underneath. Don't be afraid to love them. Don't let fear of loss keep you from joy. The strongest people are those who risk their hearts after being broken. I'm proud of you for trying. Love completely and without reservation. That's the only way to truly live. Your mother would be proud too. We both love you, always, Dad. Tears streamed down Victoria's face. He knew. Somehow he knew I'd be scared. Because he knew you. Nathan wrapped his arms around her from his kneeling position. And he was right. You are brave enough for this. They stayed like that for a long moment, Sophie joining the hug from the other side, Tom watching with unmistakable affection. Finally, Victoria straightened and wiped her eyes. So, what happens now? Now we figure out what comes next. Nathan stood, stretching cramped legs. Together. I have some ideas about that. Victoria's expression shifted to something almost shy. The settlement from my accident lawsuit. It's been sitting in investments for 2 years. I've been thinking about adaptive recreation programs. Using what I learned about recovery to help other people. Like what you used to do, teaching climbing to kids with disabilities. But expanded. All kinds of adaptive sports and activities. Victoria's voice gained strength as she spoke. Kayaking, cycling, skiing, everything that helped me feel alive before the accident. Modified so anyone can experience it. That's amazing. Nathan's mind was already racing with possibilities. You'd need instructors, medical oversight, liability insurance, and someone with caregiving experience who understands what actually helps versus what just looks good on paper. Victoria met his eyes. I'm offering you a partnership, Nathan. Not employment, genuine equal partnership in building something that matters. Before Nathan could respond, Sophie tugged his sleeve. Does this mean we're really a family now? Victoria reached for Sophie's hand. If you want to be, if that's okay with you and your dad. Sophie looked between them with the seriousness only 7-year-olds could muster. Can I call you Mom? Not instead of my real mom, but also? Victoria's composure shattered completely. I would be honored beyond words. The partnership discussion continued over the following weeks, turning abstract ideas into concrete plans. Victoria's settlement provided substantial capital. Nathan's experience with medical equipment and patient care filled gaps in her knowledge. They visited adaptive sports centers in Colorado and Oregon, studying programs that worked and identifying needs nobody was meeting. Tom Rodriguez signed on as facilities manager, his decades of mechanical expertise perfect for maintaining specialized equipment. Whatever, Dr. Chen agreed to serve as medical director, ensuring safety protocols met professional standards. The vision expanded from vague concept to detailed business plan, complete with mission statements and projected growth. 6 months after the courthouse, Hayes Cross Adaptive Recreation Center opened in a converted warehouse 20 minutes from the mansion. The space hummed with a possibility, climbing walls with adaptive holds, swimming pool heated year-round, equipment for cycling and skiing, and activities Victoria was still researching. 30 participants enrolled in the first cohort, ranging from children to adults, all facing disabilities that had limited their recreational options. The opening ceremony drew local news coverage and community leaders, but Victoria's speech stayed focused on personal experience rather than inspiration. 2 years ago, I thought my active life was over. One man refused to let me believe that. Now we're building a place where nobody has to face limitations alone. Nathan added his own remarks, talking about dignity and partnership and the importance of seeing people as capable rather than broken. Sophie helped cut the ribbon, her dragon drawings decorating the facility's entrance hall. That evening, after the crowds dispersed and equipment was secured for the night, Nathan found Victoria on the warehouse roof watching the city lights spread below. She'd walked there using her cane. The walker retired 6 weeks ago, mobility improving daily, though she still used the wheelchair for longer distances. Big day, biggest of my life. Victoria leaned against the railing. We actually did it. Built something real. Nathan moved beside her, close enough their shoulders touched. You built it. I just helped with the heavy lifting. Don't diminish what you contributed. Victoria turned to face him. This only exists because you believed in it. In me. I believed in us. Nathan took her hand, feeling the familiar calluses from climbing and therapy equipment. Speaking of which, there's something I've been meaning to ask. He produced a small box from his jacket pocket, opening it to reveal a simple band with an inscription. Victoria squinted at the words in the dim light. You stayed. That's what this comes down to. Nathan's voice was steady despite his racing heart. Everyone else left when things got hard. You stayed, I stayed, Sophie stayed. We built a family from that choice. And I want to make it official. Victoria Hayes, will you marry me? Victoria stared at the ring, then at Nathan, then back at the ring. Her answer came out half laugh, half sob. Yes, absolutely yes. Nathan slipped the ring onto her finger, and they stood together on the warehouse roof, lights spreading below like possibilities multiplying endlessly. Sophie emerged from the stairwell where she'd apparently been lurking. Did she say yes? She said yes. Sophie pumped her fist. Finally, I already picked my dress. They laughed together, the sound carrying across the warehouse roof and into the night beyond. Victoria leaned into Nathan's shoulder, solid and warm and present, in ways that still surprised him sometimes. You know what the best part is? Not the center or the engagement or any of it specifically. It's that I'm not waiting anymore. Waiting for what? For my real life to start. For things to go back to how they were. For some future version of myself who has it all figured out. Victoria's voice was soft. This is it. Right now, this messy, imperfect, beautiful thing we're building together. The words settled into Nathan's bones, joining all the other truths he'd learned from watching Victoria fight her way back to living. Life didn't wait for perfect circumstances. It happened in the choosing, the showing up, the refusing to quit even when quitting looked rational. A year later, on the center's anniversary, Catherine attended the celebration. She approached Victoria stiffly, the distance between them measured in months of silence. You've done well here. We've done well. Victoria gestured to include Nathan and Sophie and the entire operation. All of us together. Catherine's expression softened incrementally. I was wrong about Nathan, about your judgment, about what you needed. I thought I was protecting you. You thought you were controlling me. Victoria's voice was firm but not cruel. There's a difference, I see that now. Catherine glanced at the ring on Victoria's finger. He's good for you. They both are. The acknowledgement cost her, which Victoria recognized and appreciated. Thank you for coming. After Catherine left, Tom Rodriguez appeared with knowing grin. That looked painful for her. Growth usually is. Victoria watched her sister's Mercedes pull away. But necessary. The center's second year brought expansion, satellite programs in 3 cities, partnerships with hospitals and rehabilitation facilities, recognition from national adaptive sports organizations. Victoria traveled for speaking engagements, Nathan managed day-to-day operations, and Sophie started volunteering as a junior instructor's assistant. Their wedding took place on the warehouse roof where Nathan had proposed, surrounded by family and friends and participants whose lives had changed through the program. Sophie served as both flower girl and ring bearer, insisting on wearing dragon wings over her dress. Tom walked Victoria down the aisle, her father's role claimed by the man who'd supported their family through every challenge. The ceremony was simple, vows written by the couple and delivered without professional polish. Nathan promised to stay even when things got hard, to believe in Victoria when she couldn't believe in herself, to build a life worthy of Sophie's trust. Victoria promised to choose courage over fear, partnership over isolation, and to see Nathan's strength even when he felt weak. When the officiant pronounced them married, Sophie cheered loud enough to startle birds from nearby trees. The reception featured adaptive sports demonstrations, stories from participants, and dancing that accommodated every mobility level. Derek Mitchell sent flowers with a note congratulating them both, gracious in defeat. Catherine gave a toast that surprised everyone with its genuine warmth. Late in the evening, Nathan found Victoria in the climbing gym, looking up at the adaptive walls they designed together. She'd climbed earlier that day for the first time since her accident, making it 15 feet with specialized equipment and a patient instructor. Thinking about going higher? Thinking about how far we've come. Victoria's hand found his. A year ago, I couldn't stand. Now I'm climbing and married and running a business that helps people. It doesn't feel real sometimes. It's real. Nathan pulled her close, their rings catching light from the gym's overhead bulbs. We made it real by refusing to give up. You made it real by showing up that first day and not running when I threw pills at you. Best decision I ever made, taking that job. Best decision I ever made was letting you stay. Victoria leaned into him, solid and warm and fully present. Even though I tried really hard to make you leave, you had to test whether I'd actually stay. I understood that. They stood together in the climbing gym, surrounded by equipment that helped people reach heights they thought were lost forever. Outside, their wedding reception continued, laughter and music drifting through open windows. Sophie's voice rose above the noise, probably dancing with Tom Rodriguez or showing off to other children. You know what Sophie asked me yesterday? Victoria's voice was thoughtful. She wanted to know if we could adopt more kids, give her siblings who need families like we needed each other. What did you tell her that we talk about it together? Because that's how families work. Nobody makes big decisions alone. Nathan kissed her forehead, breathing in the moment and everything it represented. Broken people finding each other and building something stronger than either could manage independently. A 7-year-old girl who'd lost her mother, learning to trust again. A woman who'd lost mobility, discovering she'd never lost her strength. I love you. The words were simple but contained multitudes. Everything you were, everything you are, everything we're becoming together. Victoria turned to face him fully, standing on legs that worked through will and practice, and refusing to accept limitations as permanent. I love you too, for staying when leaving would have been easier, for seeing possibility when I could only see loss. They kissed in the climbing gym while their wedding reception continued outside, and Nathan thought about the mansion 3 years ago, where a bitter woman had thrown pills at him to test if he'd quit. She'd been testing wrong. The question wasn't whether he'd quit, but whether he'd see past her anger to the person underneath who desperately needed someone to stay. He'd stayed. She'd stayed. Sophie had stayed. And from that simple choice, everything else had grown. The future spread before them now, full of possibilities they'd build together. More programs, maybe more children, certainly more challenges that would test their partnership. But Nathan had learned something essential over the past 3 years. Love wasn't about perfect circumstances or easy choices. It was about showing up consistently, believing when belief was hard, choosing each other even when fear suggested otherwise. Victoria took his hand and led him back toward the reception, her gait steady even without assistive devices. Behind them, the climbing walls rose toward ceiling heights she'd reach again someday. Not because she needed to prove anything anymore, but because some mountains were worth climbing simply for the joy of movement and possibility. The warehouse doors opened onto celebration. Their family and community gathered to witness this next chapter. Sophie spotted them and waved frantically, dragon's wings flapping with enthusiasm. Tom raised a glass in toast. Dr. Chen smiled from her conversation with other medical professionals. This was it. Not the life Victoria had planned before her accident, not the future Nathan had imagined after Claire's death, but something better precisely because it was built from broken pieces and second chances. Adaptive, resilient, stronger for having survived the fall and learned to stand again. They stepped into the celebration together, ready for whatever came next, knowing that as long as they chose each other daily, they could weather any challenge. The warehouse echoed with laughter and music and the sound of people discovering they were capable of more than they'd believed possible. And in the entrance hall, Sophie's original dragon drawing still hung in a place of honor. Ember the dragon helping a knight in a wheelchair have adventures. The image that had started everything, reminding them all that everyone needs help sometimes. And asking for it isn't weakness, but wisdom. Home wasn't a place. It was choosing to stay, day after difficult day, building something worth keeping, even when keeping it required everything you had to give. Nathan and Victoria had found that home in each other, and nothing would ever make them let go.